Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gilda Evans, bringing you the Autism Resource Podcast. This podcast and the ARP website are your one-stop knowledge and resource space for autism and much more. I'm pleased to have Dr. Jen Malia join me as my guest today. An autistic mom of 3 children, Jen is the author of the Infinity Rainbow Club series and Too Sticky: Sensory Issues with Autism. She is also a professor of English and creative writing coordinator at Norfolk State University. Welcome, Jen, and thanks so much for taking the time to join me and discuss the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So to begin with, tell me a little bit about your personal autism journey.
So my journey started about 8 years ago when I had, a very stereotypical view of autism before I realized that I was on the spectrum, and that was about 8 years ago. And the main thing that led me to that discovery was that I had, at that time, my 2-year-old daughter. She's my middle child. She started showing a lot of kind of signs of just being in distress a lot. She had a language delay, and a lot of the doctors were focusing on that and telling me, yeah, she has an articulation disorder, a phonological disorder, she has a language delay. And all of that was correct, but there was a lot of other things going on. And I just knew as a mom that there were just other clues that that was not enough. Like, we were getting the speech therapy, but she was having a lot of meltdowns from things like that would set her off. Anything like, cutting the banana slices the wrong way, or just, kind of doing things like she would take laundry out of the, dirty laundry and, insist on wearing, a dress that wasn't clean yet. And it was like the same dress that she wanted to wear. And so all these things, I just started doing research, and I was like, what else is going on? And so all the research that I did, and that just being a PhD and having a background in research, that's the first thing I do. If I can't get answers from doctors, then I'm going and I'm doing my own medical research. I'm going and I'm looking at personal stories of people that have, whatever keywords I'm typing in. And it led me to all these personal journeys of people, discovering that they were on the autism spectrum, that their kids were also on the autism spectrum, where they got diagnosed, they got their kid diagnosed, and then they got diagnosed at the same time. And it just fit. And I just knew before I even went in sort of seeking a diagnosis for my daughter that we were both on the autism spectrum. And so I wouldn't stop until we got properly evaluated. So we started off with our pediatrician and didn't get very far because, he was willing to make the referral, but he didn't think that we were on the, that she was on the autism spectrum. So we went to the developmental pediatrician, and he also did not think that she was on the autism spectrum. She sort of, he just confirmed the same, she has a language delay and all of that. And so I left really frustrated, but then I found another avenue. I found a clinical psychologist who went on to diagnose both her and me, on the same day, as it turned out, after we had done all the testing. So it was, I wouldn't say it was a really long journey, but it was, because I kept persisting, and really she was 2.5 when she had the diagnosis, but it was just a sort of frustrating number of months, just not, if I had stopped at any point because I was told no, 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 then we wouldn't be diagnosed. So that's our story.
Now, so you were diagnosed quite late, which actually is rather common for females to be diagnosed much later in life because females are very good at masking. They're very good at imitation. And so very often that diagnosis does slip by as it would have for your own daughter if you hadn't been persistent. Now, when you got your own diagnosis, I'm curious, did that answer certain questions for you that you'd been wondering about in terms of what you experienced as a child and growing up as an adolescent and so forth, that you had been wondering about for a very long time and finally sort of had that aha moment?
Oh, absolutely. It was life-changing, but in a good way for me because it answered, like you said, all these questions that I had. I always felt different growing up, and I knew that no matter what I did, I kept changing the way I behaved. Like maybe if I do this, I won't feel like I'm always saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And I mean, I had no idea that because I was autistic that I was imitating a lot of behaviors that other people were doing, just trying to fit in. And I had no idea what I was even trying to hide. I was just trying to, be more social or be more this or be more that, because no matter what I did, I felt like I wasn't connecting on the same level with a lot of my peers. And as a child, I was I was the kid in the classroom who never said anything, who sat there and just kind of felt really out of place, never really knew when it was my turn to talk. And that sort of carried with me through my whole like education, all through graduate school even. So I never really felt comfortable. There were a couple classes along the way that were really small, and I would sort of break out of my shell, like a small seminar. I went to a small undergraduate college, Bowdoin College, and there were a few moments where I would, engage a little bit in classrooms. But for the most part, I just felt like it was so hard for me, like I said, to even figure out turn taking. So I didn't even know how to start. I felt like I was always talking over somebody, talking too much, or getting too, everything just felt really awkward. And so it answered other things too, like sensory issues. I have a lot of trouble with sticky things, which is why I wrote about a book about about sticky sensory issues and things like that. But also like walking on hardwood floors is something I still don't do. Like as an adult, I wear slippers. I can't have my feet touching hardwood floors, tile floors. And as a child, it was the same thing. I'd be like tiptoeing, if anything, until I got to the slippers, and then I could like touch my feet to the floor. Loud noises, sometimes for me, it would be like depending on the situation. Like sometimes louder noises wouldn't bother me. Other times I'd get sort of a sensory overwhelm and have to like remove myself from certain places, or other times, even just like someone turning the radio in the car up too loud. I just can't take it that day and I need to like turn it down. So all those things just kind of came together once I got that diagnosis, and just so many more things too, like washing my clothes the same way every time, getting upset if somebody tries to change my clothes washing routine. All those things like I didn't even realize were, what made me neurodivergent. I had no clue. It was just things that over the years I had always done a certain way.
So when did you decide to go public with your story and write about it in the media?
So my first, I actually learned so much from reading other people's personal stories that I thought, I would really like to go public with mine too. And so I was in a group with a lot of other writers, and I had a contact for Women's Day. So I used that editorial contact, and I mean, I was really just pitching out of the blue. I was an English professor with lots of literary criticism credentials and things like that, but I had um, no writing credentials in for mass media, but or even personal essays published at that point. So I just pitched. It was just like a paragraph pitch about how um, I was diagnosed with autism in my late 30s, and that's pretty much what the title of the article ended up being. My journey, getting diagnosed as an adult in my late 30s. And that really picked up the media, like other publications like Good Housekeeping and other magazines picked it up. And so it ended up in like 5 different magazines. And so that really took off. And then I started writing for the New York Times, the Washington Post, other kinds of related parenting stories. And that's really, it started with that. And the outreach I got from people telling me how much just telling my story helped them was enough to keep me going and writing more of those.
So now tell me about your children's books and what led you to write those.
So the first opportunity to write a children's book came from writing a lot of those freelance pieces, because I got introduced to again another writing group. Someone introduced me to a publisher that was looking for someone to write a children's book with an autistic character, and so they kind of they had read some of my articles, like my New York Times piece, and they knew that I focused on specifically autistic girls and women, because that was a sort of angle that a lot of my pieces were addressing, and how masking and things like that made it harder for women and girls to get a diagnosis. So, they gave me the freedom of choosing, what the plot would be. And so I came up with this story. Like I said, sensory issues like stickiness was always hard for me. So I thought, you know what, I want to write a book about a girl who is, she's in her elementary school class, and they're doing a slime experiment at school. And there's all this potential to touch these sticky things. And so she gets really anxious about it. And I wanted to show how, be getting accommodations from her teachers and also encouragement from her family, and not making her have the pressure to do it. But she does end up participating, but a little differently than her classmates. And so that was the first book that I wrote, a children's picture book for 4 to 8-year-old kids. And then after that, it sort of led to writing my chapter book series called the Infinity Rainbow Club. And with this chapter book series, my kids are neurodivergent. They're all autistic, but we have other diagnoses among us, including OCD and dyslexia and dysgraphia and ADHD. And so what I wanted to do with that book is have characters that are all in a neurodivergent club after school. And, they all have different neurodivergent diagnoses, and they participate in fun activities. Like the first book in the series follows the point of view of an autistic boy, and the title is Nick and the Brick Builder Challenge. And it's about kids that are participating in a sort of Lego Masters for kids kind of situation, where they're challenged to create these different Legos. So it's not so much a book about autism as a book about a kid who just happens to be autistic, going about his everyday life and doing things at school and having fun. And there's a lot of humor in the books too, because I don't feel that, a book that's like I said, has an autistic character has to be about all the challenges. It's a mix between, he does have a meltdown in the book, but he also has friends, and he also, is really smart and great at building things and things. So I wanted to sort of tap into all the different aspects of his character. And the next book, Violet and the Jurassic Land Exhibit, follows a girl with OCD, and it focuses on augmented reality and dinosaurs. So there's a lot of information, but the character, like Nick, who's the autistic boy in the first book, he also appears as a secondary character in the second book. And then those same characters end up in the third book, but then at that point it's Connor in the Taekwondo tournament. So Connor's a boy with ADHD, and his best friend is Nick, who's the autistic boy from the first book. So you kind of follow these characters and their adventures. And there's also a secondary character who's a non-speaking autistic girl. So she doesn't have she is not the main character in any of the first 3 books, but she's in all of those as well.
I love that, because as you know, and I know, and a lot of people are aware, that the autism diagnosis is very often accompanied by a whole lot of comorbidities, all different kinds of other things that come into the mix. And addressing that, I think, is wonderful. And I love the way you say you approach it, in terms of, this is just another kid who happens to operate a little bit differently, and is just part of school, part of the class, part of the group of friends, just like everybody else. And that speaks to me personally, because that happens to be my own personal philosophy, is we're all part of the human spectrum. It's just, where do we vibrate? Are we ultraviolet? Are we infrared? Are we visible spectrum? Because we all have our shtick, and we all have our foibles, and we all have our idiosyncrasies, right? And it's about getting to know the other person's vibration, right, wherever they happen to be, and understanding how they like to be communicated with, and how they like to be supported, and meeting them on their level. And that's what it's all about. And that's what it sounds like your books address. And I absolutely love that. So it sounds to me like a lot of the books that you write are based on real life experiences. Is that true? Or is there a little bit of creative license in there as well?
So it's absolutely true. And I would say it's fiction in the sense that a lot of the activities that I build it around. So like there was no Lego competition that my kids were doing, but we do have tens of thousands of Legos in our playroom in our house. And the book kind of alternates between the school scenes and the home scenes, and the home scenes are so much about what my family, does, because my son Nick, actually I named the main character after him. He has two sisters, just like the Nick fictional character, and they do build Legos at home and have arguments over Legos, and then, and also cooperate and do things together. So there's a lot of funny moments in the book, I think, that are really just taken from even dialogue that I hear with the kids going back and forth, because they're in the same age range as the book characters. So like the book character is the Nick in the book is 10 years old. My son, he's 9 now. So, and then his sisters are both older than him, but in the book he has one younger sister, one older sister, but it's very close to, and there's even a dinner scene where Nick is, he's eating his tacos, but he has everything separated on the plate. And that's, again, the sort of the crunching loud noise of the taco, or I don't eat this because, it's a different texture. I eat that instead of this, and I separate my food. That's very much, again, just like, a dinner, a sort of an average day in our house and how we interact. So.
Yeah, well, that sounds very familiar. So tell me, is there anything we haven't touched on that you would like our listeners to know about your journey, about your books, or just a bit of advice that you'd like to give to our listeners about someone who might be on a very similar journey?
So I think like what I've learned over the last, 8 years, since I've known that I was autistic. And then, like I said, it was like my daughter and I got diagnosed. Then the year after that, it was my son. And then it was actually my oldest that got diagnosed last, because I think she had masking down the most and didn't have the same, some of the same challenges. And then when she did get diagnosed, it was OCD, ADHD, and ASD all at the same time. And I think what I learned is that there's a lot of strengths that I think you need to nurture. And when, as a parent, I feel like I have to figure out, what are my kids good at, and nurture those things. So right now all my kids play ice hockey, and I wasn't expecting that to be the case. One of them started playing ice hockey, then the other, and now the third one plays ice hockey, and they love it. And that's not, something that I would have expected. My daughter, my middle child, she started out doing a lot of dance, and she's still doing that. But I would have never expected her to play ice hockey, but she's very good at ice hockey and she loves it. So whatever it is that they sort of latch onto, like playing with Legos, we have tens of thousands of Legos because they love them so much that we just keep building more and more cities of Legos. And they got these great, like, their visual spatial skills are just so far advanced. Like they're all gifted, in addition, to being on the autism spectrum, and they have talents that are very different than my own, because honestly, if I tried to put together Lego sets, I would be pretty lost. Like I don't, I couldn't follow the manual and figure out how to put it together. They go above and beyond that and make things that aren't even following, the Lego kits. So that's not a skill I have, but because that is one of theirs, I found that, I wrote a book about it because I spent so much time just sort of getting on the floor with them in our playroom and watching what they were doing and taking an interest in what they do, and not thinking about, it's almost like, what do they like to do and how can I make what they're doing the best it can be, the best situation. And that's just like how everything that I do too. I have special interest as a person, that's autistic as well. And some of the things that I do, they're not interested in at all. And, other things they like to write. Some of my kids actually write stories, and it's great that we can collaborate on things like that too. But I think nurturing the things that your kids are good at actually helps a lot more than focusing all the time on, what weaknesses need to be improved. Like I have a dyslexic daughter, we have to do a ton of literacy therapy. And that's great, but we can't do that all the time. We have to like find she's really good at math. So sometimes we have to, just do a lot of things that she really enjoys so that we can also help her with some of the things that are a lot more challenging, like reading.
I agree with what you're saying completely. And I like Legos too, by the way. So, so where can our listeners learn more about you and your books?
So the best place to go is my website, and I'll spell it out. It's jenmalia.com, JENMALIA.com. It has information about the books as well as the essays that I've written, links to those, and it has a contact form if you want to get in touch with me.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Jen, so much for your time and for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast. You can find it on Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other popular platforms. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And you can always access us and other great resources on our website, autismresourcepodcast.com. I want to thank our listeners for spending part of their day with us. This is the Autism Resource Podcast, and I'm Gilda Evans, reminding you to take care of yourself and that special person in your life.